Hey everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
Right now, people.
That's right. I like that. I like the watch. That's good. You're switching it up, and I love
That's
it.
right.
How are you, my friend? You've been doing some
I'm
reading?
so good. I've been in the middle of just like a bunch of amazing books lately, so life is
Hey.
good. Yeah.
Well, why don't you hit us up with one? Tell us what you've been up to reading
All
wise.
right. Hey, that sounds great. So I feel like I forget what I taught. Yeah, it was last week. It was more of, I guess, an adult or a high school book. There's a technical term for those, right? What do you call those?
I'm sure there is. I mean,
So,
if it was a nonfiction book and it was written for an adult audience, but I think that high school readers would enjoy it too.
okay. All right. Okay. So I digress as usual. But same kind of theme this week. This book is not like a picture book by any means. I think it's for an older audience, but boy, is it fantastic.
Wow.
So I love nonfiction, and apparently there are a few people out in the Twitter sphere that know that. So every once in a while they'll throw one my way, or they'll see something I'm talking about and they'll be like, "You should check this one out." So this book falls into that category. I start reading the thing, and it's unlike any nonfiction book or sci-fi book I've ever read, which is exciting to me. Just finding something unique. Couple interesting aspects before I share the cover reveal or the title. It starts off like in darkness, like just we know nothing, and the author gradually lifts the veil, and as it turns out, it's someone coming out of a coma, and they have no idea where they are, and it's just so cool to have a book be so, I don't know what the word is, kind of microscopic, or just have such limited info, and then gradually and naturally have the person use their kind of mind to try to figure it out. And you might think, well, that sounds easy. How hard can it be to figure out where you are or what country or whatever? And as it turns out, the person it's not what country, it's what world or what galaxy or where they are, because they actually kind of narrow down, like they're in space and they have amnesia. Did I mention this too? so it's not just like it's not just like you come out of a coma and have all your faculties. They're slowly piecing things together, which leaves a really neat interplay between present tense, the situation they find themselves in, and then kind of flashback. So they'll encounter something in space or in the room they're in. It will trigger a conversation or an email or a past memory, which then will deepen and expand their awareness of who they are, which will then enhance their real environment. Just fascinating how it builds. So now I'm going to share the cover, and then I got to tell the other thing that I just fell in love with. It's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Okay. And for Project Hail Mary, as the name implies, what kind of ends up happening here is it's like humanity and actually a couple other civilizations, but it's their last hope in the world. Something crazy is happening. And this is like a long shot to try to get it figured out. Obviously, it must be a long shot if their only hope is someone in outer space who has amnesia, right? But the thing that I fell in love with, that just fascinating, is as sci-fi as this book is, as kind of far-fetched as some of it might sound, with the space travel and the quantum physics and the alien races and things like that, the author does such an incredible job sharing the science behind it as this person kind of through metacognition and stuff, it in a way that actually made sense to me, which is saying a lot because usually I wouldn't follow deep science, but it was so exciting. I was getting kind of educated on stuff and making connections like, wow, that could like almost like, wait a second, that could actually maybe happen in this world just based on the teaching and the science behind it. So I loved kind of learning, but in a way that wasn't like they're hitting me over the head with science. Naturally, it was embedded into the story, and just a masterful job. So Andy Weir, I'm a fan, and everyone else, I would say read this now.
So would you say that book is another one that's written for an adult audience, but that maybe high school readers would be into as well? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm no expert on high school readers, but I am an expert on, this is how I live my life. I notice if something seems inappropriate, I'm like, okay, don't share that with kids. There's definitely, I loved that some adult stuff, it just feels like they're throwing stuff in the book just to throw it in there and maybe for the shock factor. I felt like this was really appropriately done. There might be a swear word or two in here, but I'm guessing some high school students maybe have heard a swear word
Maybe
before.
a few, right? Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
A few.
But I didn't. There was nothing like that that I felt was outlandish that I would protect my own 3 kiddos at home from.
That's interesting. There's a youth media award every year. Of course, most people are familiar with the Caldecott and the Newbery Award and all that. But there's one that's sort of lesser known called the Alex Award. And it is given to titles that are written for an adult audience, but that might be of special interest to young adult readers. And so the last 2 books, and I'm always interested like every year to see what's on their list, and as I don't read that many books that are written for adults. And so when I do, and I think, oh, I bet high school readers or even maybe some middle school readers would love this book, I always think about it for the Alex Award. And so these last 2 books that you shared sort of remind me of that. They might be on the Alex committee radar. Who knows?
Yeah, it's ridiculously good. And here's how much I loved it also. This is like proof. I'm sitting at the dinner table within the last week or so. I'm talking to Deb and the kids, and I say this out loud. I never thought I would say this before, but something to the effect of, I'm like, yeah, if I kind of sort of had my life to live over based on this book, I might consider astrophysics or, like that's how accessible and exciting the science was in this. It just was so intriguing, and it made me feel, I don't know. I just like it awakened sense and reverence for the new frontier and stuff like that. So, and Deb, I'm sure she's like, oh my gosh, here we go again. But anyway,
I love that books that do that like spark your curiosity, but also make you feel like empowered. Like, wow, I could really understand this in a way that I didn't think I could before. That's exciting. I love that. So great.
I'm sure I'll quickly be shut down because I literally have kind of a hankering to go read some quantum physics stuff because again, it sounds fascinating. The notion that space travel, if you're jettisoning through space light years ahead, that you experience time differently than we would on Earth, like that's fascinating to me. Now, right now, I'm thinking I might understand it just based on how well this author wrote, but I'm sure if I actually opened up a real book, or not a real book, but you know what I'm saying, a
nonfiction,
physics book, I would quickly realize, well, there's a reason I'm not an astrophysicist.
Hey, listen, you got to just think of it as scaffolding. You're going to scaffold your way to the scholarly text. That's what you're going to do. I love it. Well, it's hard, I try every week to make connections between our 2 books, and often it's very easy. This time it might be a little bit of a stretch, but as you were reading or talking about your book and sharing the idea of space travel and all of that, while this book has nothing to do with space travel, I will say that stars were an important sort of metaphor and piece of this book. So that's the connection. Also, I think it's so funny because it's almost like time has like folded in on itself here, Brad, because you have been recently sharing books for sort of an older audience, whereas I have been leaning in towards the younger audiences in the last couple of weeks. It's almost like our roles have flipped after 4 years. It's so crazy. But I want to share a picture book today that I just fell in love with. And I'm going to be honest and say that I sort of debated which book I wanted to share this week. And I ended up choosing this picture book, and seeing the picture book Lubna and Pebble behind you right now on your, like, affirms my decision, because that's one of my most favorite picture books ever. You're standing in front of it right now. There it is. I just love that book so much. And this book is sort of thematically related in so much as it deals with the experience of kids who leave their home countries for whatever reason and move to a new place, and what that experience is like. In Lubna and Pebble, the reason that the protagonist is leaving their home country is there's conflict and war going on. It's a very traumatic experience. We don't get the sense that that's the case in this book called With Lots of Love, which is written by Jenny Torres Sanchez and illustrated by André Ceolin. And in this book, we meet a family that has moved from, I'm guessing, although it doesn't say for sure, Argentina, to the United States. And our main character, Rocio, is expressing as the book opens, while she's excited to explore and understand her new home, she's also very homesick for the place that she has called home for all of these years prior. Before I unpack the cover and take the dust jacket off and all those things like we do with picture books all the time, I want to just share that this story really starts out with her listing all of the things that she misses. One of my favorite spreads, and the artwork is so beautiful. I feel like this is one of those picture books where I could share every single page because the artwork is so beautiful. But one of my favorite spreads says she missed the pretty song of her language. She missed gazing at the blue-black night sprinkled with stars and with Abuela at bedtime. And I want you to look at this. So here's the spread, right? Of her going to sleep. And then look at her blanket. It's all phrases in her language. And I just love that idea of her home language sort of being a comforting thing that wraps her up like a blanket at night, and how you might just miss the sound of your language, especially as you're trying to learn a new one, right? But the thing that Rocio misses most is her abuela. And we learned that Abuela owned the sort of neighborhood grocery store in her hometown and used to cook and make things and share them with her family, etc. And Rocio wishes so much that she had some of those things. And so as the book opens, she's staring out of her new bedroom window. She's looking at the stars. She's wondering if Abuela can see those same stars, and she makes a wish. The next day on her birthday, a special package arrives for her with some things that help to make her wish come true. It's so beautifully done. And it really just is about how home can be any place, but is often rooted in the people that we are close to. And of course, some of those sights and sounds and smells that no matter where you travel to, those things are always going to remind you of home, right? And how comforting those are. So now I want to show the beautiful cover of this book. So I want you to look at the dust jacket. There's Rocio, right? And we can see down at the bottom, that looks like a little town. And who we see in the window looks like it might be Abuela. And if we're not sure, if we look at the back of the book, we can see it's definitely Abuela, right? But when we take this dust jacket off, look what happens. There, instead of Rocio looking down, it's Abuela. And when we get to the window of the house far away, there's Rocio. And on the back, it is also switched, okay? And then we see some of the stars on the end papers, which is, again, a powerful image throughout the book and kind of reminded me of yours. But I think about what's happening as we record this, there's lots of conversation about people who are having to flee their homes because of war in their countries. And of course, here in the US, the idea of having to, I think here in the US, there's always a discussion going on about immigration, etc. And so books like Love and Pebble, which is behind you, and this book here, With Lots of Love, again by Jenny Torres Sanchez and André Ceolin, I want to make sure I pronounce that correctly. They help, I think, both kids and adults sort of walk in the shoes of someone who's had to leave their home. So I love this book so much, and it just came out. So if it's not on your radar, you should add it to those online carts soon. And most of all, I think you should read it right now.
Beautiful. Jen, the artwork in that book is stunning.
Gorgeous.
It reminded me a little bit of the last Quintesta. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, a Quintista.
Quintista. Some of it was reminiscent of that, which I think is a high compliment.
Let me just also say that I noticed, and I think you as someone who is very artistic will pick up on this, is that I noticed the color combinations on this cover, the teals and the oranges, that sort of beautiful terracotta with the greens, and that color combination is like used throughout in such a beautiful and powerful way. I love books that do that, where it's clear that the illustrator has picked a palette and then just like done variations on that theme throughout. It's so beautifully done. So I love this book a lot, and I think you would too.
Jen, one of my talents in life, I think, is cheapening your book talks or taking away from your awesomeness. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to say there's a connection to my book, to your book, but I don't want to say it because it's too far along in the book. I don't want to give it, but as soon as you said it during your book talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a strong connection in these books. But
I love it. So I feel good about not reaching so far, because I felt like I was reaching to make that connection. But
yeah,
awesome.
It's there. So if anyone listening reads both books,
you'll
call
see
me,
it.
Or tweet me or whatever. Okay.
I love it. So as we wrap up today, my friend, where can our 3.5 viewers go to check out all the list of books that we've shared over the last 4 years?
Right. I think they should definitely go to oh my gosh, I'm getting rusty. Is it BIT? Forget the W's. bit.ly/read_this_now. Woo!
Correct. That is right. That's okay.
Yikes.
Listen, I think that makes us human, right? Like, just if anybody should know that URL the most, it's us. But even we have days where we have to think about it. So I love it.
Great. Great to connect, Jen.
You too, my friend. And thank you to everyone watching. Happy reading.